Welcome back to the Center of HBCU Entrepreneurship Podcast. My name is Omar Mohammed, helping you improve and progress in business and in life. All right, so the Center of HBCU Entrepreneurship Podcast is where entrepreneurship, HBCU entrepreneurship comes to life. And we really focus on HBCU entrepreneurship centers and how they contribute to the growth of HBCU-led businesses and their impact, not just locally but national and international, and how they impact the economies. So we have two segments. The first segment is all about on the yard. So we talk about activities around entrepreneurship centers on the yard. And then we go into a segment called continuing education. It's always good to continue to learn, lifelong learners. So we'll have that as well. And we also, so those are the two. And we really focus on HBCU Entrepreneurship Center. So today we're going back down south and we have like all the down south anyway. So but we've been going down south, lately. So today we have Antoine Foreman and he is with North Carolina A&T and he's going to tell you the center that he's running. So Antoine, first of all, welcome to the Center of HBCU Entrepreneurship.
I appreciate it, Omar, and thank you for being here. My name is Antoine Foreman. I am the director of the Blackstone Entrepreneurship Launchpad at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm also an entrepreneurship professor and a part of the student success team at A&T. Overall, in everything that I do is really under the mission of instilling the entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial skill sets to all students, no matter their major or their background. Times are changing a lot between technology adoptions, AI, just the overall industry is changing. And I think it's imperative for all of our students, especially the HBCUs, to understand how to make money off their own talents and their own gifts. How do we make sure they understand the business process holistically in a way they personally can use it? And entrepreneurship really is the pathway of learning those skill sets.
Absolutely. So I'm not sure if you want to share your screen or you just want to have this conversation, which
Um, we can just have the conversation.
okay, all right, good deal. So for that, I know you have a website. Give out your website so as we're talking, people can look at your website.
Mine or the university website?
Either one or all. Let's focus on yours and then we'll give out the university website.
No problem. My website is www.support-u.org. And that's where I do a lot of the consultant work that I do, and a lot of community work I do as well.
All right. So let's jump right into that. I was going to go somewhere else, but I heard you say consultant a number of times. So are you doing the consulting, or are the students doing the consulting, or is there a team put together of faculty, staff, and students that's doing the consulting for these entrepreneurs?
Well, actually, originally, I started a consulting business when I was an undergrad. So as a student, I started doing marketing services and marketing consulting, and that bridged to now. I've been blessed enough to be able to serve over 2,000 entrepreneurs and organizations across 7 countries.
Oh, wow.
And through that work, I was able to come back and teach really as more of a professor of practice. So my background is really in the practice of entrepreneurship and the development of programs, doing scaling work, entrepreneurial audits, um, also doing a lot of entrepreneurial strategy work. And I teach the students really from that perspective. So a lot of those businesses that have been started in service-oriented businesses and consultant businesses, where they're now providing services to the community. They're providing services to peers. And they're really using that as an experiential learning tool to bridge their classwork to real world activities. From what I've seen, students' GPAs honestly increase if you can get them in entrepreneurial activities early.
Yeah, absolutely. So am I hearing right? So the students, so you're equipping the students with a skill set for consulting, and they're going out and they're working with real life entrepreneurs as
Mhm.
well as their peers.
Yep, they are. They're doing their own sales. We're training them in sales. We're training them in marketing. We're training them in ops. platforms they can use to grow their business. Some of them doing consulting service businesses. Others are doing businesses like this is actually, if you can see it, a student business water brand called Tsunami Water
Yeah,
that was created from a vet student. Actually, he was animal sciences. Now he's at Cornell in vet school, Jeremiah Pouncey.
yeah.
But he created a water business while he was here. And that water business doubles as his way of funding his way through vet school, but also his way of giving back because he donates part of the profits back to social causes, especially in terms of bettering pretty much the environment and everything with animals. So we have a lot of students doing different kinds of businesses. And I just basically use my skill sets and my experience, really, from being a student entrepreneur to pour back and show them here are the hurdles you're going to face. Here's how you bridge those gaps. And the entrepreneurship doesn't have an age limit at all, whether it be an upper limit or a lower limit. It's our responsibility in the capitalist society to learn the process and teaching them how to go through that process.
Oh man, I'm loving that. And I heard you say early on, it's just not the business school students, right?
It's not. We basically have impacted 42 majors on our campus.
That's interesting, man. Yeah.
So
I'm interested to find out. I mean, I don't know if you have this data or not. Where are most of the students coming from?
most of them are split between the business school and the engineering school.
Yep. That's what I
Most of them are split between. I think that may change actually in the long run, though.
Okay.
We're going through a transition now where I'm kind of looking into how we communicate entrepreneurship. And we have students that are coming in heavily toward the end of last year from the arts, from everything from theater to visual arts. The IT and STEM guys are realizing, one, that it's a great career path, but it's actually low-hanging fruit for them to start a business in IT.
Wow.
So they're coming over now to ask more questions, and then getting them to work together on different things and different competitions and those types of things, where one student team in particular, they have 5 students on that team. They're all from different colleges across campus.
I mean, I love that. So they're not solo entrepreneurs, but they're real world how entrepreneurship works.
Mm-hmm.
We use the term entrepreneurship a lot, but it's, you're helping create small businesses where you have the salesperson, you have the widget maker, have somebody doing the accounting. I love that aspect. And how is that for them as they are going through this process? What do you see them? I mean, I heard you say that their GPAs have increased.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you're seeing these students take away from this real world entrepreneurship task that they're taking?
I think the biggest thing is, like, that GPAs have increased. Their engagement has increased as a whole.
When you say engagement,
What is that?
engagement, what do you mean?
Them class attendance, them being in the building more in their academic buildings instead of in the student centers.
Right. Right.
Them volunteering to do things that is going to really impact their career. I think one of the other big things we do with our students is we tell them to join a number of just oars and things to throw on their resume. And now they're seeking things that will really impact their resume, that can bring numbers to their resume. Them asking more and more in terms of engagement of what can they do in terms of conferences. Are there any activities they can do off campus? And then really the biggest thing to me is also them sending that information back home.
Yeah.
I have a number of students who have come to me now and said, I came, as a freshman, Professor Foreman, I took your class because I also teach a full course load. So they're like, I took your class. You taught me a lot about the entrepreneurial process. I started my business. And let's say one of them in particular, my business is marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I realized that my cousins and my siblings have an interest in clothes. So I'm going to help them start their clothing brand based on what you taught me. And their siblings are like 13, 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
And I'm going to take that information back to them. I'm going to help them on what I know with the marketing part. But they created a whole structure, this student in particular, to say, I'm going to teach you what I learned. And I'm going to sit with you and teach you how to do a business model and teach you how to do these things, and then coach them on how to do that for themselves. And I know 4 students in particular, their siblings now are making money.
And they
They're
young.
young. They're K through 12.
Yeah. I'm loving that process. So, I was going to ask the question, what classification of the students that are coming to you? But I mean, what you just said, man, is impactful. You learn, you learn, you do, and you teach, and that's what
Hmm.
you're doing. And I'm loving that aspect of them taking it back to their respective communities, and that's how we really begin to build generational wealth in our communities. Yes, I'm loving that. All right. So you have a setup there where you're working not only with the students, but you're also working with the community as well. Are there any opportunities that you all are seeing with working with alumni?
So with my facet, actually A&T is very interesting that we technically have like 3 entrepreneurship centers. So we have Entrepreneurship Center for Ag Business. We
Oh,
have a Center of Excellence for Entrepreneurship, and then there's my center. My center deals a lot more with the students as a whole. So everything, even work with the community members, still wraps around students. So
gotcha.
I've created partnerships with local incubators for students to actually get hands-on experience through those incubators and have their first clients that are attending those incubators. Also, now a lot of the community entrepreneurs actually contacted me to say, "Hey, we have a special project that we want done by the students." I'm
Mhm.
also working with the faculty on how to integrate those student projects into their classrooms. So, as a faculty member who's a research faculty member, you can imagine them trying to juggle, student activities, juggling the research, the classroom, the committees they have to be on, and everything else. So, just taking a little bit off their plate by saying, "Hey, my really add value add into this scenario is my connection to the community. It is my connection to state government and agencies. So let me help you find those activities to place in your classrooms as well, so our students can make sure they're getting the most out of their degree." And like I said, as the ecosystem changes, as employment changes, I think it's imperative that we actually help them build their resume out in the classroom as well as outside the classroom.
Oh man, Antoine, you're making my day, man. I mean, I worked alongside some entrepreneurs as well, student entrepreneurs, and I'm happy to hear what you're doing. And I mean, I don't know what well, I know other HBCUs are working with students as well. However, what I'm hearing from you is, and I wrote it down, you help them get their first customer, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you're working with them to become legal.
Mm-hmm.
You got a bunch of entrepreneurs on campus that's doing things, but yes, I always ask this question. What type of insurance do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you cut somebody's hair wrong, you dye somebody's hair, or you have this food that you're providing, and somebody gets sick, they're gonna come after you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know you're doing that. I know.
Yep. We're working with the legal pieces, getting them registered, talking them through the insurance pieces. And even I think more interesting about our campus right now is when I say those student businesses, right? I say 27, but there's a number of them that are under, I mean, a vast number that are under there. And I say that because I only count them once they've reached 5 to 10K in profit.
Okay, okay.
So there's a number of student businesses that students are building, they're hustling, they just haven't gotten to that point yet. And I bring it up though because we see a lot of businesses like you're saying that are hair businesses,
Yeah.
that are barbers and things like that. But I think what's unique about our campus now that we've shifted the culture a little bit, we're seeing a lot more app-based businesses. We're seeing a lot more consulting services-based businesses, marketing services, ones that are getting their PMP early for project management, and they want to go and make a PMP business for small businesses. So businesses that are scalable and businesses that 10, 15, 20 years from now, hopefully they're providing internships and experiential learning projects and pouring back into the campus that way and not just monetarily.
Oh man, man, I can't wait to learn more more about that. I mean, this is the model. This is the model that, other HBCUs, if they don't have anything in place, can you really work around this. All right, so before we go to the next segment, any final thoughts you want to add on the work that you're doing on the yard?
Um, I just want to really emphasize the need for us to make sure that entrepreneurship isn't just within the business school.
Mm, I
Um, I always say it's really a bridge between the other schools and the business school. Um, and all of us, whether alumni, whether students, whether faculty or administrators, we have to make sure that, given the fact that all of us talk about things like generational wealth,
Yes.
all of us talk about things like legacy, that we have to learn that equity and entrepreneurship are keys to building both of those things. And in reality, you don't really build generational wealth without equity and without entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. And give your website out once more before we go
My
ahead.
website is www.support-the-letter-u.org.
All right, good deal. All right, so thank you for that. We're gonna transition from on the yard to continuing education, and this is the segment where we really focus on, giving you the listener additional information. So, make sure you grab the students and you can tune into, well, the first part too. However, we want people to continue to learn here. So what are we talking about in continuing education?
Really wanted to talk about how just do it is not always the best bet. We honestly need to research it.
Mm,
Um, like I said before, in regards to entrepreneurship, I have experience as a consultant, and with the consultant work, I've done business with individual entrepreneurs. I've done business with banks and CDFIs, government agencies for grants. And what I've realized over the course of my career is how often we are separated from the process
mm,
because we went too far through the process of hustle to entrepreneur
yeah.
instead of researching the foundation first.
Mm,
One of the biggest things I've realized the most is how much that research is actually more impactful to us in our culture, arguably than some of the other cultures overall, because sometimes we don't have the money to start up. Sometimes it's harder for us to go through that process. I remember in undergrad, one of the professors that I had, who's actually retiring now, so it's interesting being colleagues with him now. I'm at A&T, who I sat in the class in the back of the room, and we were going through entrepreneurship because I was one of the first. I was actually in the first cohort of entrepreneurship majors at A&T.
oh, wow. Okay.
And when she asked, how do you get your funding first? The age-old answer is you collect funding from family, friends, and you get your
Ooh.
first 20K.
I used to be a baker, the 4 F's, man, family, friends, and fools.
Yep. And this class, when they said it, the whole class started laughing. And she looked over at me because I'm usually the quietest person in most rooms, even till this day. And she was like, "Why are y'all laughing like this?" And I responded, "Professor, some of us can't ask our parents for $20 in gas money.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, 20 grand to start a business, right?" Um, and what I realized though, as I built my business as a student, was the money is really a safety net for mistakes.
Mm,
And as I dealt with more and more business, I realized the money just allowed them to make more mistakes and learn from them. But I also started to realize how those mistakes could have been avoided in the first place if they had just researched before they did it.
wow.
And not just research like demographics and how much money you can make in the industry, but really researching things like seasonality. And one of the biggest categories I always say you got to research, really on macro and micro, is one, you got to research, is it possible, right? And then two, research, is it possible where I am?
Wow. Okay. So where you are
Wait,
currently,
mhm.
whether it's in North Carolina or Maryland. Yeah.
North Carolina and Maryland, whether it's possibly where I am psychologically, right? So do I have enough information to start that business as well, right? Is it possible based off my environment? So based off the individuals around me, right? Is it really possible where I am? So when I say is it possible, some of the key things that I always say you got to research. One is, what's the growth rate of the industry?
That's right. Yeah.
Not just how much can you make, but is the industry growing, or is the industry failing? What's happening in the industry? How hard is it? What's the barrier of entry, and how many competitors are actually coming in the industry every year? So that way you can forecast who you're going to have to compete with later.
Yeah.
What's your patterns and cost? And then what is the growth requirements, not just the growth needs? And I say needs versus requirements as a little bit differently. Needs are overall everything that I'm going to need to grow in the industry with that industry, but requirements are the prereqs for me to be able to get into those needs. And then finally, what are labor and tech needs, especially as AI transforms? So is it possible in terms of branching it out? I think, personal opinion, that with AI, we can honestly bridge equity and underrepresented cultures if we use it properly. So it's also analyzing with the tech needs, can I bridge the labor needs and eliminate some labor needs with those tech needs? And then when it comes to is it possible here, it's one, what's my customer adoption rate in my actual area? Who needs it? Who's buying it? Where are they buying it? And do I have access to the neighborhoods that are buying it? Local competition. So it's one thing to have competition globally, but I got to conquer my backyard before I conquer the nation, right? So what's the competition like locally? And how do I overtake that competition locally? And along with the competition, I need to research what's my cost of customer acquisition. So how much does it cost me to get that customer in my backyard? Because that's going to be a little bit different, especially if I have a saying all the time where I say, live where it's cheap, get clients where it's expensive. Right? So you get enough clients in my own backyard that I'm known in my community for what I do.
Right. Yeah.
But I need to make sure that I'm getting clients at other places where, like me being in North Carolina, those New York clients don't see that $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 price tag on certain services the same way that someone in Reedsville, North Carolina may see it, right? So what's my cost of customer acquisition? And not just in money, but in time. Yeah. And then what's the cost structure based on my location? That business can have a cost structure, but that location has a cost structure as well. If somebody adopts my perspective of live where it's cheap, get clients where it's expensive, then there also is more of a cost in, say, digital marketing. There's more of a cost in travel. There's additions to that cost structure than if I was living in that area. And therefore, I need to make sure I know my local cost structure as well.
Yeah.
And then finally, what's the social structure and social projections for my industry? Am I having an industry that is adopting, say, things like AI fast? Am I having an industry that, with the attack on DEI right now? Am I in an industry that actually is not backing out of DEI? Am I in an industry that is backing out of DEI? So from a macro and micro standpoint too, what are the social trends in my industry and how am I adopting to that? And if I don't figure those things out, it's very hard for me to figure out a competitive advantage. It's very hard for me to figure out how I fit in. You know what I mean? And it's hard to figure out the long run dynamics of this. And really, it could become a huge barrier. A prime example of that was actually I was working with a bank and reviewing applications. And with that bank over a 4-year period, we probably looked at about 1,300, 1,400 applications. Wow. That I was the person that reviewed the application, read the business plan, and really told them whether the business was viable, told the bank that. And I remember one person in particular, Black woman, owned a restaurant. She was proud and I was proud of her. She made over $1 million in her first 2 locations. And she came in and asked if she can get about a $400,000 loan to open up another location. And I looked at her information, looked at the packets. She put her husband on the application who generated some good income too, his personal business and as an employee somewhere. And it was an obvious fit on the top level, right? And when I started digging more into her business plan and looking at where she wanted to place the location, the psychographics of the area, the real nuts and bolts, I had to call her and I said, hey, can you come to my office? And she came to the office, she sat down, and I broke it down. I said, well, I'm gonna be honest with you. In terms of helping the bank, you qualify for this. In terms of helping you, I wouldn't suggest it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And what is that?
It's real talk.
It is.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and was like, what do you mean by that? And, you get defensive when you built your baby up, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So she's like, what do you mean? And I did everything I should, and I've aligned myself. And I said, well, let's look at this. So I'm not saying what you did wasn't good work, right? But what I am saying is you could possibly choke out your long-term growth by making this the next step of your growth process. And when we looked at all of her information, so for example, I looked at her cost structure and realized she had certain costs that were really outpacing her growth. So the expansion would have actually possibly messed up her overall cost of her other two businesses. And she would not be able to leverage the other two businesses properly. When I looked at the neighborhood she wanted to place the new restaurant in, and we looked at not just, hey, here's the average income, but also looking at what's the average property value. So we can estimate who's flowing in, who's flowing out, and look at the average household income and really digging into the local level of that information. We realized that her actual desired target market was leaving that neighborhood. And even culturally, her desired target market was leaving that neighborhood and going to other places and going to a city that was about 25 minutes away.
Yeah.
So the location also had some issues.
Yeah.
And then finally, I've had to tell her your building's too big. Because the other thing she didn't research was benchmarks for lending in that industry. And I said, one of the things they're going to look at in stage 3 of your process is when you want this next business is how much profit are you making per square foot? And you want this 10,000 square foot building. So you want other businesses in this building under this structure that is going to drive down your profit per square foot. So in your next loan, you're going to actually decrease how much you can get because all 3 of your businesses are in huge buildings. And it's funny because at first she was livid. She was upset.
Hey, give me this money.
And I said, I'll do it. I'll put it through. I said, but I just ask you from the culture, from within the culture, to take 24 hours to think about it before you give me a final decision.
Yeah.
And she called a few friends of hers. She talked to her husband. It was funny because not even 5 hours later, her husband actually called my cell phone. And he said, thank you for giving the analysis. He's like, you didn't have to do that, right? And then the next day, she came back to my office and said, based on the data you saw, based on your research, what do you think the next step should be? Especially since, which I've left this out by accident, her new location was in a whole different state.
Oh.
Okay. It was a whole different state. It was actually closer to y'all. She was in North Carolina, and she wanted to actually go closer to the Maryland area, Anacostia, and everything else around that area. And I was like, this is a whole different state, whole different culture. And we really broke her numbers down, broke that research down. And she asked me to do another analysis in writing. I gave it to her for free. She took it to someone else who's another consultant and who actually helped her write her previous business plan. And when he reviewed it, he said, no, he's right. That decision on re-looking and reanalyzing her strategy possibly saved her, when the other consultant did the numbers, about $800,000.
Wow.
And when it came to the full cost of setup, employment, differences in taxes, the deep level research, and the money she had planned on pulling from the other 2 restaurants into this one, he said, no, that saved you over $800,000. And when we don't think about sometimes how, especially in the information age, where some of this research is right at our fingertips, right? I tell my students all the time, ignorance is a choice when you have a smartphone in your hand.
That's it.
That you have the ability at least to get some information, and then you have a responsibility to make sure you're getting the information from the right source.
Absolutely.
And her taking that time really saved her the cost, not just of the money, but the impact on her legacy, the impact on her generational wealth, the impact on her stability. And even her husband admitted that kind of stress would have put more stress on their marriage. right? So he was thankful because he was like, you just saved us so much headache, so much heartache. And it was because of taking an additional 4 to 5 hours to sit down and do the additional research. And the biggest thing that I've honestly realized is even the ones of us who do some research, our biggest mistake is we don't do it continuously.
Yes. Yeah.
We get comfortable after the business begins to do well. And we get so comfortable in saying, well, I know the industry now. I'm an expert. I've been in this industry for, 5, 10, 15 years, not realizing everything has trends, right? And really, everything's based on the economic trends, right? A business performs differently in bad times than it does in good times.
Yeah.
If you're doing alcohol and the economy is horrible, your sales are going up. If you own a motel and the economy is horrible, their sales go up, right? But it's other industries where it goes down. There's other industries where the packages change, the marketing changes, and we have to continuously research to make sure that we're within those trends and keeping a competitive advantage in that environment. Because an environment isn't just the industry, it isn't just the geography, it's also the social and economic climate and environment as well.
Absolutely. So you just reminded me, and I appreciate that, and appreciate the workshop that you just provided everybody. So hopefully people were taking some great notes. So it just reminds me, I mean, it's really the business plan. I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people when I was a lender, the first thing I would say, they would hand me this business plan. I would sit on a table. Tell me about your business. Who is your customer? Where are you marketing to? Well, it's in the business plan. I know, and I know you paid somebody for that. But I'm gonna give you the money. I want to believe that you can manage this money in the best way. And that the workshop that you just did in about 15 minutes, oh man, that's it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you said it, you said something key. It don't stop there. It continues to go, continues to grow. And then for me, I always said to these small businesses that are 1 to 2 person operation, you're not gonna know everything. It would be good if you had, I mean, if you're incorporated, you have to have board of directors. But if you are an LLC or a partnership, find maybe 3 to 5 individuals that you believe and trust and understand your understand business and industry and economics, and meet with them on a quarterly basis so that they
Mm-hmm.
can help with some of the blind sides that you may miss. So yeah, research is important, and you know what? I'm gonna take that back. The information that you just provided, I'm gonna take it back to the students and the entrepreneurs that I work with. You have to do your research.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, if you work with someone to write that plan, right? If they do not include you in the process, they're the wrong person to work with.
The wrong person. I used to tell them that all the time, Antoine. Yeah. You can't. And I was telling the people that used to write the plans. I used to write business plans. I used to actually sit down and interview the person. 'Cause I don't know the industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know it better than me, so let me just, let me wordsmith it. I know what the banks are looking for. But you're absolutely right. You put your brain, what's the word I was trying to use? You put your heart into it so that you understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Not the person, the consultant that's right. So definitely appreciate that, the opportunity. Y'all, we just gave you a workshop in 15 minutes. We don't save you a whole lot of money. We ain't gonna say 800,000, we just save you a whole lot of money. For somebody writing the plan, you going out there, being like the cake lady. The cake lady, she always makes these cakes for her colleagues, and they say, hey, you should go start a business. She go get a retail establishment, and then she fails because she hasn't done what? The research. So Antoine is saying, go do the research. Do the research so we can really begin to build true generational wealth. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts as we wrap up, Antoine?
Only final thoughts is, and I think it piggybacks on exactly what you said. There's a difference between being in the bakery business and the business of baking.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
make sure that when you're going through that process, even if you have a great skill set, you still need that plan and you still need that process to understand that structure. because the business of baking and the structure of that is a lot different than baking in the kitchen and actually the process of feeding your family. Just using that as an analogy. So make sure you understand the difference between the two in order to make sure you can solidify the generational wealth, that generational legacy, and that you can pass on that process as well to the next generation.
Absolutely. And once more, give your contact information out.
Antoine Foreman, my email, not email, but my website is support-u.org. You can reach me at aforeman, Foreman, at support-u.org.
Right, great day, great deal, and great day. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and continue providing education and continue working with HBCU entrepreneurship centers, because they are a resource, or so we are a resource to help you start, operate, and scale your business. Until we see each other again, my name is Omar Muhammad, helping you improve and progress in business and in life. Peace.